So this tutorial we're going to be looking at trellis stitch. So this is a good way for filling a space. It's a Crewelwork stitch. You'll find it in a lot of Crewelwork pieces. And sorry, I'm just threading up my needle here. So for this, I'm using perlé thread, but you don't have to, obviously. You can use whatever you like. So let's get started. So I'm going to be filling in this square here, and I'm just going to do my stab stitches along the top of that square. So with trellis, you're basically making, oops, nearly dropped my scissors. You're basically making a grid. So you're gonna have vertical lines and you're gonna have horizontal lines. So you can do whichever one you like first. If you want to do those vertical ones first, or horizontal first and then vertical, that's absolutely fine. Either way, whatever suits you. But I'm going to start with my vertical ones. So just coming up on that top line there, and I'm going to lay my thread down, have it flat against the fabric so I can see exactly where that's going. I can make sure that it's nice and straight. And then wherever that bottom line is, I'm just going to put my needle in there and pull through. Okay, so that's my first vertical line in there. And again, coming up on the bottom line and going from the bottom back up to the top. And again, laying that down and going in where that pencil line is. So I usually alternate. I go from top to bottom and bottom to top. But if you prefer to always be going from one side to the other, if you prefer to always be going from the top down to the bottom, that's absolutely fine as well. Sometimes it can depend on the type of shape that you're filling in. So if it's not regular like a square, if it has a bit of an angle to it, sometimes it might be easier to always go from the same side. So if you prefer to do that, that's absolutely fine. And of course you want to try and have them nice and evenly spaced as well, as much as you can. Okay, so I have all of my vertical lines in there. So now I'm going to go and do my horizontal lines. So again, just laying your thread across and piercing at that far side. So once you have your grid filled in, when you have the whole square done, you have it pretty much done at this stage, but those stitches are quite long, so the thread is quite loose on top there and it can move around a bit, especially once you take it out of the hoop or whatever it's stretched in. They can kind of come away from the fabric a little bit. So what you want to do is secure those stitches down. And to do that, we're basically going in and at each point where it crosses, so at each section where the threads cross over each other, you want to just put a little stitch in there. So for this I have a different colored thread, so I'm just coming up at one side of that cross. So as I said, I have a different colored thread for this, just so you can see exactly what I'm doing. But if you want, you can continue with the same thread and blend in with the rest of the grid, or you can do what I'm doing and have a different color and make it stand out a little bit. But basically you're coming up on one side, you want to get nice and close, and you're going down on the opposite side. So just one little stitch in there to secure. And the same on the next one, coming up on one side, the same side as I did on the first one, and going down on the other side. Now you want to be careful not to move the stitches too much when you're putting that little securing stitch in. What I mean by that is if you move your thread down to get your needle up, you're going to be distorting that, and your grid won't sit quite right. So you want to get them nice and close, but you don't want to be distorting the threads. You want them to lie like they're supposed to. Okay. So I'm just doing one diagonal stitch over each of these crosses. Now the other thing you can do, I'll show you on this line, you can do 2 stitches to secure. So one is enough, you'll have enough to secure it with 1 stitch. But if you want it to kind of stand out a bit more, you can do a cross like this. So I've done that first stitch, and then I'm just going the opposite way to do a little cross on the top. So the same stitch as before, and then just going the opposite way. So as I said, 1 stitch is plenty to secure it. You don't need more than that. This is just a decorative way to do it. So you're just going to continue securing the whole way down and across your grid. So once you've done all of those securing bits, so you can see the first line I did going kind of that way. The next line I did the crosses going first that way and then that way. The second line, or the third line, I did opposite to the first line, so it's going in a different direction. So it's very subtle, but there is a slight difference there. And then the crosses, I did the opposite way to the crosses that I did on that second line. And then back to the first way again. Okay, so you can see there's very, very small difference, but it can make a difference, especially if you're stitching a little bit bigger than I am here. So once you have your trellis done, that's it. That's your trellis done. But once you have it finished, you can add other little things into it. So in the middle of your squares, you can add things like French knots for a little bit of detail. Or you could do kind of a lazy daisy thing. So if you do a lazy daisy or a detached chain, sometimes it's called. You can do them kind of spreading out from the same point. So you can add other stitches into this as well once you have that kind of grid in your space there. So you can have a little bit of fun with that, play around with it. I would also do the outline as well, cover up those stab stitches. You could use one of your more linear stitches like a back stitch or a stem stitch or something like that to do the outline, or depending on what part of your design you're doing it in, you could be covered by something else. I don't know, depends what you're doing, I guess. But yeah, that's your trellis. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back next time with something kind of similar to this.